All right, in today's video, we're gonna break down Kendrick Lamar's N95 remade in Logic Pro. So let's jump right to it. First things first, the tempo for this one is 140 beats per minute. Before we get into it, let's go ahead and just give a quick preview and then jump into it track by track. All right, so to start things off, let's go ahead and break down the drums. The drums is pretty much the same thing throughout the entire beat. We start off with a hi-hat right over here. This is what the pattern looks like. Then we got ourselves a clap. Then we get a snare. And then we get an open hat. All right, and once again, all together, it sounds like this. All right, and then moving on into the pattern, we introduce a kick into that pattern. And it's this kick right over here, just on the ones. And then we get into the main sound that I think defined this track, or at least there's two sounds that define this track. The lead sound, that dun dun dun, and then the bass in the background. Let's start off with that main lead sound. It sounds like this on its own. All right, for this sound, I went ahead and used Logic's retro synth over here. Anytime you're trying to get that classic sort of synth type of sound, reach for retro synth, it's your best friend. So for this preset, I use Dance Basic Lead found under Synth Leads. And it's basically the default preset. All I really did was pulled back the filter bit to get some of those highs in and pulled a little bit of chorus to make it a little bit softer sounding. So I should mention on this sound right over here, in the original track, there's a little bit of sidechain happening every time the kick hits so that the kick comes out really loud and hard. So for this, I used an instance of Duck Out. Now you may be familiar with this plugin. It's by yours truly. This is the beta version for the upcoming update to Duck Out. Aside from the new visuals, there are some new algorithms that help you out getting that sidechain effect really, really quickly. But for this one, I stuck to the one-hit wonder algorithm preset under punch, and for the sidechain, I just pulled in the kick sound from our drum kit. So every time this kick hits, that synth is going to drop a little bit, and you don't have to worry about any of those crazy settings that you need for sidechain. Everything is done right in this plugin for you with one knob, but more on Duck Out in another video. So let's get back to the remake. Next up, we get a piano sound here that layers up that lead sound. All right, and that layers up that dance lead sound. For this sound, I used Logic's Steinway Grand Piano, and nothing was really altered on this sound, short of just bringing in a little bit more ambience and a little bit more reverb using the smart controls. Next up, we got another defining sound for this track, and it is that crazy bass sound. So for this sound, I used two basses to create one whole bass. One is more of the higher frequencies of the bass, and one is just that subtone to make it nice and fat. So for this sound right here, I used an instance of Logic's ES2 synthesizer and used the Electric Buzz Synth Lead preset. Not too much was adjusted, but if you notice and listen to the sound, it sort of lacks some low-end subtones. So for that, I brought in another bass. Right? And that just is going to carry a lot of that subtone weight to this bass. And this, I use Logic's ES1 synthesizer. And once again, one of my favorite bass presets to use, the synth bass, deep bass preset in Logic's ES1. If you ever need a clean sounding bass, this is your go-to bass. And just to make sure that the basses don't clash, I took an EQ here and just really focused in on the low frequencies, and on the buzzier bass, I made sure that everything is cut out below the point at which this is cut off over here, so that they don't overlap each other. And also we get a sidechain effect happening on this sound. We have another instance of duck out, so that every time that kick hits, this bass will drop a little bit as well to give room for that kick. Because in the track, that kick is really punching through the mix and you could hear the sidechain compression happening. We solo all that out together. So every time that kick hits, once again, the sounds drop out or duck out, so that it gives a nice pocket for that kick to live, and it just really punches through the entire mix. All right, moving on over into the B section of the track. The drums stay the same, the kick drops out, the bass stuff drops out, and that lead synth drops out. But in turn, we get a new piano sound or a new piano pattern. For that sound, once again, I use another instance of Logic Steinway Grand Piano. Once again, not much adjusted on that sound aside from just using the preset. And then we get this pad sound right over here. A really nice full sounding pad. For this sound, I brought up an instance of Alchemy. Found under pads, the preset is called Air Choir Sweep, and I'm using the warm performance right over here. And once again, I was lacking some of the low tones to this pad, so I brought in another preset over here. For that preset, I'm using the Blooming Bass preset, using the subdued performance. All right, so there is section B. Let's move on to section C. Everything is pretty much the same. Some instruments come in and out, but we get this sound right over here. And for the sound, I use an instance of Logic's Retro Synth. I use the pad preset found under synth pads called Dynamic Soft Pad. And I just use a lot of EQ to cut out the low and top end of it, just to give it a really narrow sound here. This is what it sounds like in the mix with everything else. And that's pretty much all the sounds in the track. It just pretty much repeats itself for the rest of the track. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And listen to the break we just put together, Kendrick Lamar's N95. Let's go. So right there is the remix to Kendrick Lamar's N95 remade in Logic Pro. If you want to download the session or the playback to this, you can find that link below the like button. If you do have any questions on this or just want to chat, let's go and talk in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Later.